Christian, good to see you as always, and thanks for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. Um, I wanted to ask you about something that you said to me when we were talking a couple of weeks back now. You said to me, our business is based on the fact that people don't read the manual. Now, I thought that was an interesting sort of take on what do you mean by that, and why is that important in the context of what you do? Just tell people about that.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm first off, anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Christian from Eventflow. We support event organizers with exhibitor and sponsor manual software, and we are, as you said, we're trying to tackle the problem of the fact that nobody reads manuals. It could be, in our case, event manuals, like if people that are turning up to exhibit at a trade show. They're given a 32-page technical manual about floor loads and Wi-Fi and God knows what else, and they don't read it. And what happens is they then, I've been guilty of this, just pick up the phone or email the event organizer and ask them instead. And it's something that we've really realised by working with event organisers is a massively sort of underestimated problem. They've got a lot of the time they've got small teams and they've sometimes got senior people being dragged into answering very simple low level questions. So we're trying to do something about that.
Okay. And just tell us a bit about, I mean, because your business is called Eventflow. I mean, just tell us a bit about the technology, the system that you've developed.
Yeah, no problem. So it's basically Eventflow is an online platform for managing exhibitors predominantly for trade shows, but also it could be partners at big flagship events like Goodwood Festival of Speed or other events. We work with clients all over the world. It's ultimately it's a single source of information. It's a place that when as an exhibitor, when you've signed your contract to take part in a show, you would typically be onboarded onto our system, and it's somewhere for you to find out everything about that show, upload your insurance, stand designs, that sort of stuff. So just get ready for the show.
And what is it about your setup that is different to the kind of other stuff that's out there?
Well, ironically, there's not a lot out there. It's sort of a
Right.
very neglected part of the market. We actually built the tool 11 years ago for the Goodwood estate. They came to us. They'd been using a tool that wasn't great, and they sort of we won a tender to work with them on it. We built a system from the ground up to manage their partnerships. So the likes of Mastercard and B&W and Ford that were building great big stands at Festival of
Right.
Speed, very
Right. Yeah.
complicated. Um, from there, we serviced them for years, and then around COVID, the events got cancelled. But ironically, another department at Goodwood, the content team that manage anything from an F1 team like Mercedes to a 80-year-old Maserati owner, they came to us and said, "Oh, we could use this for managing
Yeah.
people coming to the events." So that was kind of that planted the seed, and from there on, we realised actually there's a lot more events that could benefit from the tool. So we developed a system. It became Eventflow about 3 years ago, and yeah, we've been kind of growing it globally ever since.
And can I ask, what, I mean, my assumption is, tell me I'm wrong, that, because of what you do, you collect a vast amount of data, or you store a vast amount of data, presumably. I mean, what's the kind of AI play here? How does AI sort of
Yeah.
fit
So
in?
what happens is because what we do is we kind of take those old-fashioned PDF manuals and digitize them, give exhibitors somewhere to
Yeah.
find information. We have a lot of information. We kind of got an event bible for each of these events. Some of our clients, I mean, so we work with Live Golf, the golf tournament. They had 160 pages of content that they put onto the system. So there's a huge amount of information. What we've then done by kind of working with clients, we realized that there was a fantastic way of applying AI to then try and answer all of those low level customer support
Right.
questions.
Okay.
Because ultimately, as you said at the beginning, nobody reads the manual. So the idea is they don't need to with Eventflow. We've got a very sort of integrated, baked in chatbot, if you like. I don't like that term because it always reminds me of little annoying pop ups. this is fully integrated. Exhibitors can log in 24 hours a day, ask questions, and get real world responses. Something, it's more of it's in a conversational style. And the beauty is that obviously 24 hours a day they can get responses, but also in any language. So if they ask questions in Spanish or German or Welsh, as our developer used to test it with, it comes back with really good responses. And it's just something that nobody really asked us to do. But as soon as we rolled it into beta testing, our clients just said, this is a fantastic, it's an absolute game changer. They're just drowning in low level questions, basically.
Yeah, yeah, no, I can see that. And what is it? Where are you going with this? I mean, what is it? What are you building towards, if you see what I mean?
Well, I mean, what we're trying to do at the moment is, I guess because we built this for Goodwood, when we moved more into the trade show world, we had to, very quickly learn the intricacies of that market. So the last few years, we've been learning through working with clients and sort of rolling out product updates around that. But I think now going forward, we've got a really good base. We are trying to expand this internationally. We have tried to build the tool to be as self-service as possible.
Right.
And long term, we're looking, we would love to bring in lower price models that are sort of open to the masses, anything from a council event up to, the Olympics. We want it to scale for all sorts of different use cases, effectively anywhere where you need to communicate lots of information and capture data. But in terms of AI, I think we're seeing already through talking to clients that there's a fantastic opportunity to actually improve their information. So because it's locked down entirely to their content, the system won't hallucinate and pull in anything else. If it can't answer a question, it will just state that, please contact the organizer. We then capture that information and we're now presenting that back to the organizer to say, look, hey, you've got 20 people asking a question about floor loads. There's nothing in the manual. You need to answer that.
Yeah.
And obviously then going forward, we'll be looking to use AI to actually start helping organizers do a lot more with kind of, the resources they've got rather than having to bring in freelance things. There's so much data, there's so much going on that we can start
I
flagging.
mean, what you're saying to me sounds like it's almost like a self-improving system.
Yeah, that's the key really. And I think what I would love to do, with, probably 2, 3 years down the line is then start evolving the system to be a lot more, I guess, less reactive and more about trying to capture information from exhibitors. If somebody's asking the system questions, there's nothing to stop the AI assistant coming to them saying, oh, could I just check your insurance documentation? Could you pass me your logo? The idea that the sort of traditional idea of form filling, us sitting there filling out insurance forms, I think in 5 years is going to be dead. You'll talk to
Yeah.
an AI tool that will tease the information out of you and do that for you without you necessarily even realizing. So that's where we want to take it. We want to make it a lot more intelligent, really, and a lot more intuitive to actually capture information from people. Because, some of our clients, I mean, for example, Goodwood, some of their forms for the content side, that there'll be 100 questions long, information about old Ferraris and stuff. And that's the sort of thing that, people hate filling that out. So if we can start using the tool to do that, that's where we want to go with it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like given what you've said, it sounds like there's lots of opportunities to develop it actually going forward.
I think so. Yeah, it's one of the challenges with working with AI. We've realised very very quickly is the pace of change. So
Yeah.
we deployed the first sort of version into beta testing February March time, and within 2 months it was already completely obsolete, and we had to completely restructure the system again to work with the later models. So, the problem is it's just moving
Yeah.
the whole time. So, which is exciting. But I think it's just trying to work out where we can apply AI to actually help the users and the people, the administrators on the system rather than just adding it for AI's sake.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's definitely what we're trying to do.
And let's talk about how you. I mean, you're talking about what you're doing. I mean, let's talk a bit about how you're going to build it, or the process of building the business. I mean, to what extent would you say your personal values have influenced the way the bit you built the business?
I think because we never woke up and wanted to run an event technology business. I
I was
think,
going to say that's a little
yeah,
bit of an odd career choice.
no, exactly. So because we had a design agency, we still do, and because the original contract with Goodwood kind of came through that, I think our values are very much around service and delivering something that's exceptional and well designed. Design is a massive part of what we do. And I think how that's affecting the business now, I think we are trying to keep that customer service element, in this sort of age of AI assistance and ticketing apps and things. Is ironic because that's what we're adding to the system, but at the same time, we are still trying to keep a quite a sort of I guess try and keep a model where there are humans and our clients can talk to us, because I think the more people we talk to, actually, that seems to be becoming more and more important, that people actually have someone to pick up the phone to. So I think that's definitely part of where we're going. It's maybe not quite the norm with SaaS businesses, but I also think it's a differentiator in the world, again, of AI SaaS products. Having a face that people can pick up the phone and talk to, and knowing that there is a real person there, I think is going to become more and more valuable. The balance is trying to get that service level right, and
Yeah.
obviously not over service.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's probably
but
going to evolve, isn't it, as people's expectations evolve?
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think, in terms of those values, it's just trying to keep, true to that, trying to, not just create updates and features that we want to do, but actually listen to the customers and have that real feedback loop. Because, we've added a tremendous amount of sort of real necessary features in the last 2 years just by working with people and being at the coalface, learning it.
Yeah. And let me ask you about that, about the thing about the human piece. I mean, I wanted to ask about the flip side to it, actually. What does it mean to you to be a decision maker in the AI, in the world of the age of AI, for want of a better way of describing it? I mean, has it changed the way you approach decision making about these things?
I I think so. I mean, it's a strange one. I think on the one hand, it's a terrifying time to live
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's so much uncertainty. Um, I was reading about birth rates dropping to the lowest level in 50 odd years or whatever, and it's a strange time. But I think we use AI tools a lot for, I guess, having that kind of consultant on our shoulder. And
Right.
you need to be careful, I guess, not to use it as gospel. But I think working through problems and actually sort of just again having that 24/7 person to or tool to talk to and
Like having a
actually thrash
critical
things out
friend,
with.
isn't it? It's like a
It
critical
is.
friend.
And we use it a lot for being critical. We use it a lot to stress test stuff. And I think that's find that very, very helpful. I think looking back to, pre AI tools, I think I've changed a massive amount of that. And I think it's
Changed
I'm
for the
I'm
better?
a
I mean, do you mean changed for the better?
yeah, I think I'm a lot more efficient and probably a lot more effective than I was. Less procrastination to some extent. I've always been impatient, and I always, I want to sort of keep things moving. But I do think that I'm better at actually working on strategy because of these AI tools and actually stress testing things. Um, I guess the negative is I think burnout is a lot harder to. The problem with this is you're kind of expected now to run at 110 miles an hour the whole time, or 110%. And I think I've noticed in the last couple of years that just that constant hamster wheel of is getting faster and faster, and sometimes it is difficult because again you feel like you can do everything at the same time. It's a human trait. You want to sort of run that quickly, but you just can't all the time. So I'm sort of this year, I'm definitely realizing that the hard way and having to learn when to sort of slow down.
I mean, running fast is great, but it's not sustainable in the long term, is it?
Exactly.
That's the difficulty with it. I mean, everyone knows you've got to go quick sometimes, but it's not. It's just. I mean, if you're going faster than you can cope with, it's just not sustainable, is it? That's the problem, I think.
And I've read quite a lot about that same thing, about people
Yeah.
saying that actually AI makes you so much more efficient to a point, but then what happens is you end up switching context, jumping
Yeah.
on 20 different jobs because you can, but then it burns
It
you out.
affects your
So
deep thinking, doesn't it?
yeah.
The kind of deep work thing. Let me ask you about failure. So, to what extent would you say failure has shaped the way you've approached building the business? I mean, have there been, in the past, have you made particular mistakes and you thought, well, I'm going to do it completely differently this time around? I mean, you talked a bit about
Yeah,
making it successful, but has failure shaped the way you've built the business?
I think it has. So the agency I started working at, I don't know, about 12, 13 years ago, ended up buying it off the founders. And I think that's taught me a lot about, um, failure, everything from making the wrong decisions to hiring the wrong people. I think I've learned a lot through that. But I think the biggest thing is I actually 2018, I developed a food product, partly because of having this design branding agency, created this whole brand, saw a product in the States which looked great. No one was selling it here. So I created this food-based product. That was the biggest lesson in terms of
And why was
what,
it, what did you learn from that? I mean, that sounds like
well,
something horrible.
I again, going back to my impatience, I thought I kind of had I think I sold a car, had a car loan's worth of money, had a product and some stock, and thought I could take on the FMCG world and just sort of launch a consumer food product. And I got traction, was selling it on Amazon and lots of wholesalers and things. But it was a great lesson in I literally stepped out the agency, left a salary to do that, and then learned very quickly that actually these businesses take a lot of money and a lot of contacts and time. And I didn't have the money, I didn't have the contacts, and I didn't really have the time. So it was a great lesson in knowing what not to do, and probably a great lesson in properly
Kind of
testing the
hubris, isn't it?
market.
Kind of hubris, really.
Yeah, I think, as I said, it was a product that instantly connected with an audience and it was selling. And actually, my closest competitor was made at the same factory and they were turning over 1.2 million about 18 months after launching. Sadly, I was coming in second, and it was just one of those things. It didn't quite fit. It was more of a health food product. It didn't really fit my values. It was one of those things. A perfect example of properly doing your homework, market research, understanding why people are buying this. Um, and I think, I sold it on. I sold it to a company that South African companies supply Tesco, and they have done nothing with it. So it's also a lovely lesson of just because you sell a business on, I was expecting it to go and do wonders, and then nothing happened, and it's just completely dead now. So which is a real shame. But I've learned, one, not to get involved in perishable products because it's very, very difficult when your product's going out of date all the time. Um, but actually just listening to what people want properly, understanding that. And I think that's why Eventflow came about, because after that I went back into the agency. We ended up buying the agency off the original founders and realized, well, let's look at what we've got, let's look at what's growing. And the event software was growing despite doing anything to push it. And I thought, well, that's clearly where we need to go. So
Yeah. Let me ask you about the flip side to that. I mean, I've just been asking about how failure shaped the way you've built the business. I mean, what about success? How have previous successes shaped the way you've approached the business?
yeah, I think it's I guess in terms of successes, I guess it's probably client success. Certainly if you look at Eventflow, I think as we sort of touched on, we literally built a product for Goodwood, went to a trade show, sort of put our head above the parapet and said, look, we've got this product. And at the time we had one client. And I think very quickly we had interest. We signed up the Bieber conference, which is a multi-award winning conference. Um, and an event in Australia called AIM, which is a huge event for event organisers in APAC. And I think that very quickly showed us that one, we were onto something, but also if we build this right, we can deal with people all over the world. This is not just a product to sell to people, in West Sussex, which is what we had originally, but actually something that we could scale. And I think that was a real lesson. And then I think, like I said, learning from customers. There's been some real challenging times. I think even at the moment we're going live with some very big event organisers at the moment, and they're very challenging. Well, I say challenging. It's a very different challenge to a small independent, and I think it's just trying to not get disheartened or fed up with the client, but actually trying to dig in and work out, okay, what is causing friction? How can we improve that? How can we improve the product? And I think the more we've done that, the better, better the product's got, and ultimately it's been easier to then approach others. I think my business partner is always joking and saying that I get a kick on sort of taking a person from being a real nightmare, pain in my side, to then within 6 months being an advocate. It's kind of like he's always saying, oh, you really get off on it. These people that are quite awkward to work with, and then they end up being a sort of massive fan.
It's a pretty good skill to have, though.
I think I see it as a challenge. Sometimes, clients are rude to you, but there's usually a reason for it. Often it's not actually us, it's because they've been burnt in the past or whatever, and they're expected to be burnt again. So again, it comes down to the challenge is trying not to overservice it. And that's the thing I struggle with, is I then want to sort of appease. I'm a people pleaser. I want to try and help. And that's difficult when you've got,
And
lots of,
it's not always doable, is it?
and I think that's the next stage of our business, is actually scaling the customer support and learning to properly let go and let people do that, rather than having effectively the founders kind of on the front line. And I think that's going to be a difficult transition, but hopefully what we can do is bake in the right really the sort of the way we work, try and distill that into a
Yeah.
to
And
a team.
it's surprisingly complex as well. I mean, we've talked about those sorts of issues on a few occasions, isn't it? I mean, it is much more complex than people think often.
Like I can imagine. I mean, even just trying to find the right people. I was thinking about this earlier because there's people I know are thinking, oh, could get somebody in, could help, part-time mums, stay-at-home mums, which is something, for the age of our kids, we know lots of stay-at-home mums that are looking for work. But equally, it's trying to find, well, who is the sort of person we'd want reflecting the brand, and actually, how do you instill, if somebody's being quite rude, how do you make sure that that person you hire is going to be able to sort of absorb that and not get rude back? So no, it's going to be a challenge. I'm not sure. I think you set out to build a software sort of SaaS product, and what you realize is you end up, the technology is one part, but actually a much bigger time consuming piece is the customer service.
Yeah. And let me pick up something that you've just talked about there. I mean, have you ever felt, if you like, that the business is outgrowing your expertise?
Um, Not at the moment, but I think it will. I think definitely from a technological side, my background many years ago was web development, but I actually very early on took the conscious decision not to get involved
Right.
and to let my business partner, our CTO, manage that, because I'd seen it with the agency. There's nothing worse than a sort of out of touch developer trying to get involved, and it's just clash of egos. So we very early on, when we decided about 2021 to rebuild the technology from the ground up, we made a conscious decision. It was my business partner takes that on. I take on the sort of sales, marketing, customer service roles. And then from there, we've scaled the teams, but still kind of kept those silos. And I think it works well because I'm now very much almost a product manager, if you like. That's one of my main roles, is is really working out where the product goes. And I think that works well. I don't get involved. I don't start telling our CTO, Henry, how to do his job. But equally, he respects that I'm dealing with clients every day. So if something is causing issues, we need to look at that. So it does work quite well. Interestingly, with AI agents and vibe coding, which is a horrible term, but these kind of new technologies, one of the things we found is it's almost enabled me to do that role.
Yeah.
But I realized very quickly, whilst I got very excited and was going away, sort of getting AI agents to build features that I've wanted to do for ages, realized very quickly within a few weeks that actually I need to step back and I need to still keep the process, because it's all fine and well me going rogue and trying to do all this stuff, but ultimately it just ends up causing more work for the dev team because they've got 50 different pull requests of different code and everything, and it just becomes unmanageable. So I think I realized through that very quickly that actually it's not helping, despite the tech being there, and despite the fact I can do that, it's not necessarily what I should be doing.
Yeah, and that's often I think one of the most difficult decisions for a CEO is to work out what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy call a lot of the time, I don't think, which is why
No.
you do see people. I mean, it's that famous thing, isn't it, about working on the business, not in the business. But you often see CEOs stuck in the business because they're trying to work out, well, if I'm not the right person to do that, who is? And actually, am I the right person to do that? And should I get somebody else to do something else? I mean, it's not an easy decision.
No, and I think it's difficult when you're a fairly small startup as well, because
Yeah.
we haven't got the money to go and, I would love to hire a team of customer service people, step back from doing that. As I said, there'll be challenges with that, but we can't always afford that. So, and I think we found this, especially like with the development stuff, is that actually hiring extra developers is great, but it's also then causes the problem of managing this team of developers, and the actual, to some extent, the product slows down despite having more people. So I think it's there's a balance, I think, in terms of I shouldn't be as involved as I am. And I know that over the next 3 years, I need to pull back from the service side of things. But I think I'm comfortable. Like, we have a PR person that does PR for us now, because again, it was on me and I just wasn't doing it. We have accountants, bookkeepers, we have other people bolted on. We've just actually got someone that's testing for us, because again, it just all of these things just end up on team members, when actually, well, things like testing we can easily outsource. So we're looking at ways where we can work a bit smarter and actually, like you say, start pulling ourselves back a little bit from the day to day. I think that'll be easier for me to some extent than my business partner, our CTO, because obviously he's built the whole system,
Mm.
so it's a bit more difficult to pull back. But then again, I think the future, the way that AI coding is going, he won't necessarily need a big team in 3 years' time. I think actually being nimble and small is going to be something that works in our favour.
Yeah. I mean, that is the thing about being small, isn't it? Is you can be nimble, which is the thing that gives you an edge over bigger companies.
But
That might
we
have more
talked
money.
about Yeah, and we talked about this recently. People we know that have got teams of 80 developers, and
Mm.
suddenly in the age of AI coding, they're going, well, you could do this with a fraction. So I think that's the thing. Like, I've often been jealous of bigger companies having more
Yeah,
resources.
yeah,
And now
yeah,
I'm looking at it going, actually, I
yeah,
much prefer the problem of not having the resources and not having to get rid of them if they're not needed,
yeah,
than having, big teams of people.
yeah. And what would you say is your biggest? So, I mean, it's interesting. We talked about somebody else's headache there, which is I've got a too big a team. I mean, what would you say is your biggest headache at the moment?
Um, I think it is just too many hats. Probably. I think we're at a stage where we are scaling, and I think we're at a bit of a glass ceiling where we need more people. but we can't afford more people. So it's just that's the biggest hurdle at the moment. And I guess really it is a kind of marketing PR sales problem in that the product is in a really good place. But I think I spoke to someone last year and they said, you're the best event tech product that no one's ever heard of. I think that is the
That was a nice
problem.
compliment.
It was a very nice compliment, but it does summarize where we're at. Like the product's very, very good. We've got really good clients, got big clients. What we need now is more bread and butter work. We just need volume. We need to, continue scaling. So it's all going in the right direction. Don't get me wrong, but that's the biggest hurdle for us at the moment. And then once we get over that sort of threshold, the next problem will be, I think, more about team scaling the team. Actually managing
Yeah.
people as we discussed.
Let me ask you about, I mean, you've got clients in the UK, in the US, in Europe, in Australia. I mean, I'm always interested to hear about how the kind of how do you localize, if you like, for different cultures? I mean, doing business in London is different from doing business in Singapore, which is different from doing business in Sydney or whatever, isn't it? I mean, what's been your experience of those differences? I mean, have you really had to change the way you do things in different jurisdictions? I mean, how's that played out for you?
Um, Not necessarily. I think I've been surprised in just how much the world now, the obviously English is the spoken language. I've been very, very surprised, certainly with our European clients, that language has very rarely been a barrier. I think that's the number one thing that surprised me. We've got clients in, France, Germany, Czech Republic, all sorts of like Spain things, and they're not really that bothered about the fact that it's in English, which I think that's, as I said, that's been a real surprise. Just last week we were out at a trade show in Germany. Again, every single meeting we had with people, and that was truly a global event. We were talking to people from Argentina to Saudi Arabia. We even had a great conversation with a lady from Kazakhstan. So it's crazy, like just how accessible the market is. I think the biggest challenge for us is support across time zones.
Right.
I think, we can, especially with AI tools these days, even translating the whole system is really not difficult to do anymore. And, to do it well. But there are smaller things like right to left issues, which is quite tricky with software products because it obviously changes the whole interface. But other than that, it's pretty accessible. But it's just time zones; they're just so difficult. We're
Mm.
dealing with Australian clients where you're pretty much never on the same working day.
Mm.
Um, and the challenge again with that is that they're finishing as we're starting, so you've almost lost a day all the time. When they say it needs to be ready on Friday, it's actually for us it needs to be ready Thursday, sort of thing. And that's been quite tricky. But then with the US, it's just same sort of problems. You end up more and more meetings in the afternoons and stuff. So what we need to find is local partners.
Right.
We've just found that quite difficult, and I think that's just because a bit like the customer service thing is trying to find someone to represent the business
Mm.
and ultimately the brand and us. It's deeply personal to us. So trying to find someone
Yeah, it's
that we
very
trust.
difficult, isn't it?
It
Yeah.
is. And we've got somebody in Australia that's supporting, but then again, there's not enough work in Australia for it to be a full-time thing. So it's a challenge. I think it's again something that I didn't I think I overlooked just how tricky it would be. And everybody I've spoken to has just said the only way they've got it to work is partners, certainly in the US and the Middle East.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you about, I mean, I want to turn to what you've learned from the kind of journey. I mean, as your career has progressed, I mean, it's your, multiple businesses. Would you say that your definition of what a good decision maker is, has that changed as you've matured?
Yeah, I would think so. I think. I've worked with lots of different people, lots of different characters, and I think the agency business gives you a fantastic insight into lots of different companies, small or large. We've worked with tiny little businesses down the road up to LG and all sorts of other people. I think certainly decision makers have realized that the people you often look up to when you're early in your career, who are maybe fantastic public speakers, very confident,
Yeah.
a little bit arrogant, you look at those people and you think, oh, they're successful. That's someone I want to aspire to be like. And, I can't imagine ever being as confident as them. And I think what you realize, or certainly what I've realized, is a lot of the time that's BS. And
Yeah.
actually,
It is.
you kind of get to a point where you look at them and go, I sort of often walk into a room now and think, I don't want to be anything like that person.
Yeah, it's interesting as
Um,
well because often people that are very good at talking about things are not necessarily very good at getting stuff
yeah,
done, are they? Which I think is the other thing. But politicians are a bit like that. I mean, all they do is talk. They don't necessarily have to make anything happen.
yeah.
Well, they try to make things happen, but it doesn't happen a lot. I mean
Uh,
that is the difference with business. I mean, one of the things I like about business is that it's fast moving. Because customer expectations change, so what you do's got to change, and it's kind of a bit of a never-ending journey, isn't it?
and that's the thing. And I think you get it a lot. With small businesses, you often get the sort of the founder owner. It's very difficult to work with because it's his money or her
Yeah,
money,
yeah,
and they want to be involved in everything, which is very difficult. And then you get the corporate sort of thing where, again, you get people fantastic corporate careers, but they don't actually do any work. They either have teams to do it or they just, get by being very confident and a
yeah.
good speaker.
Leadership by
So
delegation.
exactly, early in my career, we had a client. This was in a different business. I was just an employee, but we had a client that was a worshipful company in London, and they had lots of military people, and they were all fantastic, lovely people. But it just always stuck with me because they had been very senior in the military and they had had huge teams, and suddenly they were expected to sort of do it all themselves, and it was a real eye opener. I won't say much more on it, but it was just
Yeah,
definitely a lesson in like, oh, actually they haven't got anyone to do it anymore, so they have to get stuck in.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think the agency's been great for that because you see so many different walks of life. You really do.
yeah, yeah. And I think the other thing that's interesting about agencies is that because part of your job is to work out how to communicate about their thing to the big wide world,
Yeah.
which requires you to really understand what their thing is, isn't it? And often in ways that. I mean, I was talking about this with somebody this morning. Technical people often are very good at the technical bit, but they're not necessarily that great at communicating with
Yeah,
with ordinary mortals like the rest of us.
yeah. And we've always found that, we have some great clients on the agency side that we've worked with for, some of them nearly 20 years, that actually predate the agency, ironically. But the institutional knowledge that we've got
Mm.
is often better than employees. A lot of the time we've worked with them longer than employees have worked there. And like you said, the product guys in particular, some of these businesses that are manufacturers, they're incredibly knowledgeable. The challenge is that they often struggle to work out what they should and shouldn't say.
Yeah,
Often that somebody will not really need to know the ins and outs of a product. They need to know that, what it's quick to install and it's not going to fail and all that sort of stuff, but they don't need to know, you know, everything else. And there is a bit of a skill in that. And I think going back to the sort of delegation thing, I think one of the greatest achievements that we've done with the agency is the fact that, we've got some great designers that do, they do understand the products. They're passionate about client products. And we don't really need to get involved much day to day anymore. They've now got that knowledge and, we just sort of oversee it. And I think that's what we need to instill into Eventflow over time, is to find people that, again, are as passionate about what we're doing as on the agency side.
let me come back to the decision making thing. To what extent would you say, well, what's cost you more money? Bad decisions or delayed decisions? I mean, just to pick up your point about things not getting done. Bad decisions or delays decisions? Which have been worse?
Um, that's an interesting one. Probably it would probably be a bigger level delayed decisions. I mean, obviously everybody makes bad decisions. There's always bad hires and all the rest of it. But
Mm.
I guess the worst thing with certainly with Eventflow we ever did was listen to people. Sort of 2016, 17, we went out to various people in the events industry and said, look, we have a product. Good would love it. What do you think? Could we sell this to other trade shows and other events? And every single one of them said, no, no, no one will buy that. It's too bespoke. It's Goodwood's too
Well,
different
they
to
got
trade
that
shows.
wrong, didn't they?
Well, exactly. And the problem is, that was before I went off and did a food brand. And actually, had we have started looking at it then, um, we'd potentially be years later down the line. I think, we had a good product then. In the one sort of caveat to that is obviously COVID. With the event industry, COVID completely destroyed a lot of businesses.
Yeah, yeah.
So it could also have been a good thing because if we had put a lot into it and had a lot riding on it and then COVID hit, it could have taken us out of business. So, it's kind of, I guess, a blessing and a curse. But I found the same with the food business. Everybody's willing to give you advice. Ironically, my best advice to a lot of people is not to listen to advice and actually just
Mm.
learn as you go because, somebody may have got a very successful business, but they haven't necessarily achieved or they've not done what you're trying to do. They've not built the business you're trying to build. So,
And obviously, I mean, I think there's some good lessons from product design there about having a point of view about what the thing is and should be and how it works, which is different from the way other people are approaching things. And they sometimes look at it and think, "Well, you should do it in a different way." Well, no, actually, we're coming at it from this angle, and
yeah.
often people don't get that. I think.
No, I mean, going back to the agency. So one of our clients is a lighting manufacturer. Something they did several years ago, which was just stroke genius, and it's so simple, is they came up with this philosophy of designing products with electricians for electricians. And basically, the whole principle was we get a load of electricians into the building and we ask them what they like and what they don't like about the product. And then it's just a loop. We just refine it, present
Yeah.
it back. And they started that several years ago. And it's now, I mean, I think they're now the second largest lighting manufacturer in the UK, doing fantastically well. We've obviously worked with them through that journey and we've seen it firsthand. Years ago, it's not like the whole flogging a dead horse is the wrong analogy, but it's like if you've got a product that's badly designed, it needs all the marketing design support it can possibly get. It's the
Yeah.
age old thing. If a product's any good, it will sell itself.
Mm.
And I think that's what we've seen by supporting this company. You just look and go, that is genius. The electricians now love the products, install them, recommend them. The feedback loop's always going on, so the products are always getting better and better, and they just, all their competitors are copying them. And I think what I've realized, I think what me and Henry realized very early on is actually we saw that success and thought, well, let's apply that to Eventflow. There's no point, we're not event organizers, never organized an event in our life. So we just need to be all ears. We need to be listening to every time there's a problem. We had this with Eventflow, I think about a year ago. Client came to us and said, we have stand shares. We sell a stand to somebody like a government, and they will invite 30 people to
Mm.
come along. And they said, it's a real nightmare. How can we do this better? So between us and the client, we worked out a system that's now used by 60% of our clients. And it just works. And it's just one of those things that we'd never have ever known about it or
Mm.
built it or anything. But by learning and just, we try not to bespoke anything. We kind of look at it and say, will this work for everyone else? And if it does, then we're happy to listen and build it. And we've got it at the moment. We're doing a lot of integrations with people. And it's the same thing. Once you've built an integration with someone, you suddenly realize, oh, well, there's 5 other clients that will benefit from that, and we can streamline these processes. So I think we're just constantly listening, and I think that's the best advice. Is just don't forget, the people you're actually building it for.
Mm.
Uh, we've joined we've joined a thing called the Ops Nest, which is literally just event ops professionals. And I think it's a weekly session. I think half the time they think, what the hell are these people doing on it? It's me and my colleague. But actually, we just sit there, we listen, take it in, and we've learned a lot of things. And we've built some good network contacts just by listening to what people are actually having problems with.
Yeah, that's right. If you can figure out what people are struggling with, you can then figure out how to help them, can't you? I mean, I think your point about listening to customers is really good advice. Let me ask you about the flip side. I mean, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever had?
uh, God knows. There's lots, I think, in terms of sort of over the years of the agency, I think people are always telling you how to do things, how not to do things. We've had bad marketing advice with kind of spamming people on LinkedIn and, getting in trouble for things like that. And I don't know, I think it's hard to pinpoint one particular thing. I guess you could say with a food brand, maybe getting a bit carried away, listening to people that thought, oh, this is a great brand and it's got potential without actually properly doing the homework of looking in to see who this is for. Um, yeah, I think there's probably just lots and lots of things really. I think equally people I've worked with, and there's good and bad advice. I think it's just, I guess as we've got older, just realizing what advice is well, that a lot of advice is not worth listening to because it's
Yeah,
based on what someone else did years before. So
yeah. I mean, I was about to say, I mean, that's one of the problems with a lot of the stuff you see on YouTube and what, I mean, it's just nonsense, isn't it? It doesn't really equate to really how businesses work, I don't think. I mean, it's people making stuff up. If you do this, you'll 10x your revenues. You think, yeah, that's not really going to happen, is it? So yeah, let me ask you a similar question in a slightly different way. I mean, if you were to start again, what would you do differently?
um, I think if it was to start Eventflow again, kind of touched on, I think we would have done it much earlier.
Right.
We'd probably worked with Goodwood 6 years before we even thought about selling it to anyone else. And my interest was always about building a product business. That's I'd always been in agencies my whole career, and I wanted,
And why
you're
did it
always
take you
helping other
six
people.
years then? I mean, that's a
I
long
think
time.
I think just it's the day-to-day challenges. We were running an agency business that required a lot of involvement. So the idea of stopping and saying, "Oh, well, let's go and do another business," was tricky. Um, I think just generally, you know, everything from the fact that it was a single client project. So there was never the budget to invest in actually bringing, say, developers in house or anything. And it was only when we doubled the size of that account, there was a little bit more money involved. And that's when we started thinking, hang on a minute, we can do more with this. I think we were very nervous about taking a product that we had essentially built for one client, selling it to others. That in itself was a difficult thing because it's like, well, we don't want to ruin that relationship because we're selling this system to other people. I think what we realized, I mean, somebody said to me years ago, like, if you have two clients in the same sector, it's a conflict of interest. If you have three, you're an expert. And I think that's kind of what we found in a way. Actually, the minute we had 4 or 5 clients, suddenly we could go back to the original and sell the benefits. Well, actually, we've built all these extra features
Yeah.
because of the additional revenue and the additional input from everyone else. So yeah, I guess it would just be start earlier, really. But hindsight's a wonderful thing. It's actually quite difficult to do that. And I'd played around with all sorts of different things in my spare time before. Um, and I guess it's really the fact that, rather than just trying to find something, start up a business around something you personally think is a good idea. I think actually my key advice is build something for people that they're asking for.
I mean,
And it's hard.
I was just about to ask you what advice would you offer to somebody, and that I think
Yeah.
is a really good piece of advice. You know.
It's very, very hard because, as I said, I've suffered several times, oh, this is a great idea. I'm going to go and
Mm.
build websites. And buy products and all the rest of it, buy stock in from China and stuff. And you very quickly realize, yes, it could be a good idea, but there's a lot of things you haven't thought about. And I think some of my really good friends have spent thousands on things that just have never gone anywhere. Like equally, I had somebody at one of our customers set up a dry road type business very early on,
Really?
and exited after 2 years, and made a healthy profit, I should say. Get my words out. He did really well off of it, and again, that was just purely, saw a gap and did it. I think that's the exception. I think actually building a business around a core need where you've got clients that are effectively, I guess, paying you to build it. It's a horrible way to put it, but we've been very fortunate that actually clients have paid us to build the product. So,
Yeah.
we haven't had to borrow loads of money. We haven't had to give away equity or anything. It's been good. And I think that's my advice would be look at what you're doing and whether that's in a day job or a business you're already running, and look at what's working and what's growing.
Mm.
We invested loads in agency coaches and things for the agency because that had been very flat, trying to look at, well, how can we get more clients? And actually the thing we weren't doing was looking at the clients we already had and the profit that we were making on projects, and then going, well, actually, this one here, we've barely done anything in the last year, yet we're charging the same money for it. So, and I think that's what we did. That's where we realized there was an opportunity to scale this. And I think, that's hopefully we won't look back. I think, we're at that point. So that we've been around for about 3 years with the brand. The company's only 2 years old since we split it from the agency. So we are still very much in our infancy. But I think the next 2 to 3 years, I think will hopefully be, a period where we
One
scale
last
quite
question:
well.
what is it excites you about the? I mean, what are the opportunities on the horizon that really excite you? I mean, it sounds to me like there's lots of things actually, but what top one or two things that excite you about the next stage of development?
I think it's just what we can do with the product. I think we've barely scratched the surface really
Yeah,
of how we can actually make this a better process. I think the challenge is that we were, an awful lot of people even today do not, they still rely on PDF event manuals, shared drives,
yeah,
spreadsheets. There's a lot of talk about how you can revolutionize all of that way of working with AI tools like Claude. But the fundamental problem is the information is still scattered all over the place. And even if you're working more efficiently, your exhibitors are still
yeah,
very unsure of what the hell they're supposed to be doing. I think it's an often overlooked thing that, you or I that turn up to an exhibit at a show, that's something we do. That's part of our marketing activities.
mm,
It's not the core business.
yeah,
And I think with the agency, a lot of our clients that do trade shows hate them. They absolutely hate them, especially big, 100, 200,000 pound stands. They're an absolute nightmare. And one of the marketing managers I know very well has said to me, it's the worst thing I do all year. It's so much stress. And I think if we can just try and make that process better for the exhibitors, it's going to be great. And I think we've got some inroads now with some of the big event organisers that largely are still reliant on manual methods of doing all of this. So I think that's what excites me. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of opportunity. I think the daunting side of it is just, there's a lot of uncertainty. How do you scale a team? And as we've discussed, but trying to be excited about it. I think it's going to be good. I think we're definitely going in the right direction.
yeah. I mean, I think it's a brilliant proposition. Having had to spend a lot of time at events in the past, I totally get your point about the information that you're provided with is not necessarily very helpful. So being able to tap into it online, in an easy to use format seems to me to be a great proposition.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Christian, as always, thanks for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. Some great advice there, I thought. Really appreciate that. And good luck with the next bit. I mean, obviously talked a lot about the journey that you've been on, and I mean, what excites me is all the things that are starting to bubble up for you. We were talking about it before we came online, wasn't it? Really, about all those things that are sort of starting to bubble up, and it's been a little while. You put in
Yeah.
quite a lot of work to get to this point. It seems to me there's lots of really good things on the horizon. So, yeah, good
Well,
luck.
hopefully.
Good luck.
I, well, I was talking to our sales director the other day, and I think the whole sales sort of, well, not analogy, but that whole thing of know, like, trust.
Hmm.
I think I've realized that applies, that's not just a sales thing, that applies to the business as a whole. Because I think, the challenge is getting people to know us, then it's to like us and to trust us. And I think we're hopefully moving from, we're getting more awareness, people are starting to take notice. The next thing is that actually trusting us, running pilots and all the rest of it. And I think, the event industry is massive, but it is dominated by key players, and that's where we need to go in the future.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, good luck, and I'm sure we'll talk about this again at some point in the fairly near future. Thanks for coming on, Christian.
Cheers. Thank you.
See you. Bye bye.